I think the guy is a serious major gangster. I have guns all around this house. You know, this art form isn't worth me and my family getting killed over.
SugeKnight is just evil, and that's what evil does. You know, he was a bad bodyguard. He was a bad guy. And I had some work being done, and I walked in, and there was no red Corvette in my garage. You know, I always felt that Suge had something to do with it.
And Eazy was showing him papers and different things. Like, it was stuff it was above my understanding. Like, I couldn't read contracts and nothing like that. But he was showing him papers saying that. He was telling him, like, look at what Jerry's been doing. He's trying to sue me because I fired him.
And he said, I bet if something had happened, the Mexicans would have been down, you know?
Jerry Heller thought he had a handle on things, but he just didn't know he was meddling in a world he couldn't possibly understand. He thought business contracts and boardroom deals could keep the streets in check, but he never really stood a chance against the bosses of Ruthless Records and Death Row Records. Yeah, he was a big name in the industry, no doubt, but when it came to the streets back then, SugeKnight and Eazy-E were on another level.
Well, who was the real gangster out of all that?
Out of N.W.A?
Yeah.
Eazy.
I have guns all around this house. You know, this art form isn't worth me and my family getting killed over. I think the guy is a serious major gangster.
Those two weren't just running the game as label bosses, they were real deal gangsters, and depending on who you talk to, maybe even more than that. By the time Heller realized what kind of game he's gotten himself into, it was already too late. The lawsuits didn't matter anymore, the violence did.
We're talking about guys that traditionally don't go to the police. Police aren't exactly their friends, or we wouldn't have written songs like the police.
Let's dive in. Tracing it back, the whole thing really kicked off when Dr. Dre and Eazy-E teamed up to form N.W.A back in the 80s. They had already built a solid crew and were making noise all over Compton, but they needed someone to handle the business side of things. That's when Eazy-E, who had stacked up a serious amount of cash from the drug game, decided to take a big risk. Eazy had a connection with Alonzo Williams, a guy who ran a popular spot called Eve After Dark, one of Eazy's regular hangouts. Funny enough, Dre had actually been a DJ under Alonzo's group, Class Wreckin Cru, before N.W.A was even a thing. That group was already under the management of Jerry Heller, and they were doing pretty well at the time.
Heller was your manager?
He was my manager first.
The Class Wreckin Cru.
Class Wreckin Cru.
So wasn't he kind of managing Dre already, in a way?
He was kind of managing Dre, right, correctly. He was managing Dre.
So Eazy made his move. He used his ties with Alonzo to set up a meeting, and once they worked out the details, Heller was officially in the picture. That moment changed everything. Ruthless Records got a serious boost, but it also set the stage for a whole lot of drama.
We had a meeting where I had to go out to Jerry's house, and everybody was sitting there.
As soon as Heller started managing N.W.A, cracks started to show. The first to call it out was Arabian Prince. He felt like something wasn't adding up. Money wasn't flowing the way it should, and when he voiced his concerns, nobody listened. Eventually, he had enough. He walked away and never looked back. The rest of the crew kept pushing, dropping hits, selling out shows, living the dream. But then, Ice Cube started noticing the same thing. He realized Arabian Prince might have been onto something. The money wasn't matching the success, and things just weren't adding up. Then came the final straw. Heller put together a contract and offered each member a $75,000 check. The rest of the group went along with it, but not Ice Cube. He knew his worth, and that money wasn't cutting it. So, he made the boldest move yet. He walked away with his dignity intact, leaving N.W.A behind.
He's the X factor. He's the one who took it over the top and made it where it was a situation where I had to leave. You know,
so when you leave, do you step?
When Ice Cube left, most of the crew still didn't get what was really going on. Dre, for example, thought he was doing all right. He even signed a deal for $100K to drop 5 albums, which broke down to just $20K per album. At the time, that sounded like good money to him.
Initially, Dre was supposed to have had a bigger piece of Ruthless, and he was getting, I think he was getting like $20,000 an album. At that time, he thought that was good money. But
that feeling didn't last long, especially as their fame exploded across the country. Things really hit him when Straight Outta Compton dropped. The album sold a massive 3 million copies in just a few months, yet somehow, nothing changed for him financially. With the kind of pull Dre had in the industry, he knew it was time to start asking questions. He brought up his concerns once, but Eazy-E and Heller brushed them aside like it was nothing. But Dre wasn't the type to just let things slide. He kept bringing it up here and there, but the answers never came. The tension kept building, and eventually the perfect opportunity to make a move presented itself. The Doc, this guy who handled a lot of the writing for N.W.A. and even had his own solo career going. Things were looking great for him until just 5 months after dropping his debut album, disaster struck. He got into a horrific accident that nearly cost him his life. He survived, but his voice was gone, which meant his rap career was pretty much over. After his accident, things between him and the group started to shift. His contract became a huge issue, and he found himself stuck in a bad deal with no way out. That's where SugeKnight stepped in. Back then, Suge was working as his bodyguard, and he had been by his side through all the rough times. But then, Suge started digging into his contract, and that's when they realized the Doc was being ripped off.
Friend of mine. Right. And the guy had, he had a tragic, it was an accident. So I said, well, look, one thing you can count on that, you write songs. Right. You don't know X amount of songs for Eazy-E, you don't know X amount of songs for N.W.A. That's worth a lot of money to you.
And so word of this got back to Dre, and when he heard Suge was helping the Doc fight for his rights, he saw his chance. Dre asked Suge to take a look at his own situation, but it was a different ballgame. Suge claimed Dre never had a contract.
Right. Dre said, well, look, I'm not really from Compton. Everybody usually against me. He said, I'm over here ruthless, and I got this deal that for a bonus, if I do 2 records, I'll probably get it. That's got to be crazy. What your contract says. He said, I never seen a contract. Right. I signed something, I've never seen it. I said, we got to get your contracts.
So instead of acting right away, they decided to play it smart and come up with a solid plan. Before making any big moves, Dre went straight to Eazy for a face-to-face conversation. He wanted answers. After all, they built N.W.A. together, so it only felt right to handle it man-to-man. But Eazy wasn't having it. Things escalated until Dre gave him an ultimatum. He had to choose between him and Heller. And just like that, Eazy chose Heller. That told Dre everything he needed to know.
Stepped to Eric and I said, look, man, it's either me or him. One of us got to go, you know? It's like if he goes, we can continue doing what we got to do. He chose.
Dre didn't waste any more time. He demanded to have his contract terminated. He was ready to walk away from Ruthless Records for good. But just when it seemed like things could end cleanly, Eazy-E wasn't about to let him go so easily. He insisted that Dre had to fulfill his contract before he could leave. And just like that, the whole situation turned into a full-blown war. Dre took all this back to Suge and they were ready to make their move. Soon enough, Dre set up another meeting with Eazy at a Hollywood studio.
Andre made the call to Eazy. He said, look, man, I ain't gonna Eazy say, well, who all gonna be there? He said, man, I'm in the studio by myself. Nobody even know I'm working. Just come to the studio.
Eazy showed up, expecting a one-on-one, but instead he walked into a room with Suge and his crew. Word is, they were armed, throwing threats about his mother and even holding Heller under their control. In fact, there were also rumors that they had pressed and roughened Eazy pretty badly. Eazy didn't waste time though. He signed the papers, and just like that, Dre was off the hook for a while. But Eazy wasn't the only one Suge put pressure on. Heller got a taste of it too. According to Mob James, one of Suge's guys back then, they paid Heller a little visit during all the chaos. They spray painted his walls, intimidated his security, and left a clear message. Even Heller himself backed this up in a Vlad TV interview. He claimed he had a strong feeling Suge was behind the vandalism at his home. He even confronted him multiple times, but Suge just kept denying it. That whole situation put Heller on edge, so much so that he started carrying a gun everywhere he went. In fact, he had firearms stashed in different places just in case things went sideways again. After all this tension, it wasn't long before cracks started forming between Eazy and Heller. Someone close to Eazy later revealed that he was finally seeing what Ice Cube had been saying all along. Heller was milking the group dry. Things got so bad that rumors started flying that Eazy had fired him.
And Eazy was showing him papers and different things. Like, it was stuff, it was above my understanding. Like, I couldn't read contracts and nothing like that. But he was showing him papers saying that. He was telling him, like, look at what Jerry's...
Heller, not one to take that lightly, hit back with a lawsuit against Eazy. The details were murky, but one thing was clear. Heller probably had no idea just how dangerous Eazy could be. See, Eazy-E's ties to the Mexican community ran way deeper than most people realized. Even before he started signing Chicano rap groups and working with Latino artists, he was already moving with Mexican homies in his circle. One of his closest friends back then was a Mexican-American named Damon Trujillo, better known as Crazy D. If you take a close look at the cover of N.W.A and the Posse, N.W.A's very first album, you'll notice something that had fans confused for years. Since N.W.A stood for Ninjas with Attitude, people kept wondering why one guy in the picture clearly didn't fit the name. Some even thought someone had photoshopped themselves in. But nope, no edits, no tricks. Crazy D was always there, and he wasn't just there for the pic. At that time, he was actually more involved with N.W.A than some of its core members, like MC Ren, who only ended up in the photo by chance. Crazy D was in the mix for real. He even helped shape their early music. He was credited on N.W.A's first single ever, Panic Zone, proving that Eazy's connection with the Mexican community wasn't just a phase, it was there from the start. But Eazy's bond with the Latino community didn't stop there. Years later, he took things even further by signing Brownside, a Chicano rap group led by the late Toker and another trailblazing Mexican rapper, Kid Frost. Back then, Latino rap wasn't really taken seriously in the mainstream, but Eazy saw what others didn't. He was ahead of his time. He knew the Chicano rap movement was about to blow up and become a force in the game.
He had already signed the Brownside, and then he ended up signing Kid Frost, and we ended up working on the Brownside record, you know what I mean? And you know, that was, I mean, he had that mind state about it because he knew that that was coming. Like I said, the guy was like...
Brownside, in particular, was something different. Under Eazy's wing, they didn't just make music. They helped define the sound and feel of Chicano rap. But they weren't just some rap group trying to hop on a trend. These guys were straight-up gangsters, real street figures with stories to tell. Everything they spit was authentic. No gimmicks, no fake flexing, just raw, unfiltered reality.
Came up and started blasting 'cause I knew they couldn't fake it. Brokers on the loose. And I'm straight gang related.
One of the wildest stories about Brownside's loyalty to Eazy happened during the infamous Ruthless Records versus Death Row Records war. As Toker later explained, Brownside played a major role in keeping Eazy safe. Toker said he and his crew showed up at Ruthless Records right when things with Suge were reaching a boiling point. It was almost like destiny put them there at the right moment. Death Row's crew thought they had the upper hand, assuming Eazy was alone and vulnerable, but they were dead wrong. Brownside was already there, standing by Eazy, ready to go all in. Toker told him straight up, "We got you, whatever happens."
We got to Ruthless when the Death Row Ruthless beef was cracking. So they thought they were gonna overpower my boy because my boy was by himself. But you know Destiny's a mother. Destiny took Toker and the Brownside clique to Ruthless.
At one point, they had a serious conversation with Eazy, and Toker didn't sugarcoat anything. He told Eazy, "If there's anyone you need gone, just say the word." But Eazy, always cool-headed, laughed it off saying, "It's not even like that, man." Toker wasn't buying it. He shot back, "Nah, it's exactly like that."
Long story short, we told E, we rolling with you, fool. We got your back. What's cracking with this Death Row Ruthless? Who you want gone? Cause we ain't around.
Toker made sure Eazy understood. If he ever needed anything handled, they had the young homies ready to step up. These weren't just tough words either. Toker claimed they had 15 and 16-year-old kids who were down to handle business, knowing they'd only serve a few years and be out by 22. That's how serious they were about protecting Eazy.
You're like 15? All right, don't worry about it, E. I'm gonna send my little young juvenile torpedo so they can go ahead and do YA life. They're gonna let my boys out when they're 22 years old.
After that, Eazy's ties to the Mexican community got even stronger. He rolled with Brownside everywhere. Business meetings, high-end restaurants, industry events, always making sure his people were by his side. And they weren't just there for looks. They were ready for whatever, hoping to run into anyone from death row to send a message. Eazy wasn't alone, and he had soldiers willing to ride for him till the very end. And then one day they got their chance. Toker said Eazy was just chilling at a cheesecake factory when a group of about 7 or 8 guys rolled up, claiming they were with death row. They surrounded him, trying to flex, maybe thinking they had caught him slipping, alone, outnumbered, vulnerable.
Car, and there was like 7, 8 playing death row, waiting for their cars to pull up because they were leaving the Cheesecake Factory. Right when my boy E walked past them, they all surrounded him. What's up? And they were saying.
But before all the fame, the money, and the Ruthless Records empire, Eazy-E wasn't a superstar. He was just another young dude growing up in Compton, caught up in the rough, unpredictable, and often deadly game of street life. Before he became the face of gangsta rap, he was knee-deep in the streets, running in circles where survival wasn't promised and loyalty was the only real currency. Back in the mid-'80s, Eazy found himself moving with a crew known as the Kelly Park Compton Crips. Now, whether he was officially jumped in or just rolling with them depends on who you ask. But either way, his name was known in those circles, and if you were even loosely affiliated, you were in the game, whether you wanted to be or not. The Kelly Park Compton Crips, once the Kelly Park Hustler Crips, controlled the east side of Compton from Alondra to Greenleaf Boulevard. More than just a neighborhood gang, they were deep in the city's gang politics, caught between the Atlantic Drive and neighborhood Compton Crips. But in the early days, it was all unity, one big family running the streets together.
Back in that time, it was more unity.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? Like, and everybody knows you can go to a lot of Kelly Parks and pull up their sleeve and you're gonna see neighborhood on them.
Mm-hmm.
You feel what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Then came the crack epidemic of the 80s, and the game changed overnight. Money poured in, fueling greed, paranoia, and violence. Once solid alliances crumbled, turning brothers into enemies and neighborhoods into battle zones. By the mid-90s, Kelly Park was deep in a brutal turf war. Eazy saw it all firsthand. Even as he built Ruthless Records, his ties to the Kelly Park Compton Crips never faded. He didn't just rap about the streets, he lived them, and that's what made him different. That's what made him untouchable. Even though Eazy-E and Jerry Heller are no longer with us, Eazy made sure he set his boundaries straight with Heller before it was too late. As for Suge, yes, he is serving time, but he cannot be forgotten when it comes to street realness.